This week's guest is Mark Rosenberg, or as many people on the internet know him, Deadliest Lift. On his Instagram page, Mark is known for doing incredibly heavy lifts in outrageous fashions. Throughout the episode, we talk about how movement patterns can change based on your build, how he comes up with some of his content, and how he programs leading into competitions. If you haven't seen his page, check it out on Instagram at Deadliest Lift, and as always, enjoy the episode.
Before we hit the intro music, I wanted to introduce to you guys the Yoakum Strength Insider. The Yoakum Strength Insider is our online training platform that takes all of the ideas that we talk about on this podcast and implements them into a program that is available to you at the touch of your fingers. Our goal with the Yoakum Strength Insider is to create better movers, to level up your life, and to move forward from where you are. We do this in a holistic fashion. Not only will you receive a program that has helped hundreds of people become better movers, you'll also receive access to our app that allows you to track everything, has video links for all exercises, and allows you to be in constant communication with a Yoakum Strength coach. Along with this, you'll get our 30-page PDF nutrition and lifestyle guidelines. That includes everything from what to eat, how much of it to eat, why we're eating it, meditation habits, and other lifestyle habits that we implement with our clients to really level up their lives. If you're interested in trying out one of these programs, use podcast 25 in the discount section right before you pay for 25% off your first program. Boom.
This is the Yoakum Strength Podcast. Take the leap down the rabbit hole with us as we interview elite level guests to unravel what high performance really is.
All right, well, Coach, welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to have you here.
Oh, that's me. Hey.
He's here in the dungeon, dude. I love the setup. This is when we were at my old gym. My new gym, it's kind of like a shared space, so I can't do podcasts in there. Otherwise, it's a total shit show. We have like pickup soccer in there, and these dudes, like, they're a Somalian bus driver group, and they have their lunch break all at the same time, and it's like 40 dudes that go in there. So if I try to do it at lunchtime in there, it is the most aggressive form of pickup soccer I've ever seen in my life, and they just sit there and scream at each other, but they're all like best friends. It's so funny. But so we're in a little bit more of a bougie setup. We're not in our dungeon setup, but our old setup was in the same spot. We had a rack right behind us, and it was kind of dope. But I told you before we started the podcast that I've been looking at yourself for a long time. Like, I've been a huge fan for a long time of just like the cool shit you do in the weight room and the expression of strength. And it's not that it's taking, I don't know, I don't want to say it's taking things less seriously, because obviously you're taking things seriously enough to have a world record in the deadlift. But man, some of the shit we say in the strength conditioning field, it just kind of goes out the window when you look at somebody like you that's just a fucking monster. And I would like to cover, just to start, like, how did you get into the weird shit? Like, how did you get into the branching out into like doing your own thing and kind of making, in the way that I say, like, making fitness fun again?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, started off with, like, obviously not some of the more performative or really off the wall stuff I do now, which, I mean, some of it is just because it's a fun thing to try. Some of it is because I thought it'd be a fun video, but it kind of started with this generally not having super typical proportions. So none of my lifts, even the regular lifts, look quite like the textbook versions. And, after I got over the initial, like, trying to do them like everyone else is, like, I'm never going to squat like a Chinese weightlifter. My femurs are significantly longer than most people, so my squats look different, my rows look different. Once you get used to that, it's kind of embraced, and I went to, different techniques for a lot of my stuff, like a lot of, obviously, good morning squats, because I have such a dominant posterior chain. And that kind of bled into realizing that a lot of people are not right, or at least not totally right about a lot of stuff. And I'd get into little arguments online before I learned better. And people would tell me things were not safe. So a lot of my earliest videos before I even started Instagram were just someone would tell me something wasn't safe. So I'd go and find like the most exaggerated form of that, do it in my basement when I had the basement gym, and then post a video thinking that would be a sound rebuttal. And of course, it being the internet, there is no way to win that argument. You don't win arguments on the internet. That's not what you're trying to do. It's just a never-ending spiral. But that got me started there. And then I started on Instagram because Mikey Maybe Me, who you might know as either the skateboard guy or now the badminton guy, had a competition 4 years ago. I want to say November 21, maybe 22. Anyways, he had the Eagle Lifting World Championship, which was a competition he hosted for weird lifts. Because I had some people told me about it, and I didn't even use Instagram. I'm like, yeah, I'll go on Instagram and use that. I had like one thing uploaded. I forget what it was, and I hadn't used it in like a year. And I'll go back to just not using it after the competition's over because I didn't really care about Instagram. But I posted a bunch of my old videos. I won that competition for whatever that's worth, and people seemed to like what I was doing, so I just kind of kept doing it, and it snowballed from there.
What was the lift submission you had for the ego?
Oh, I dumped a ton of videos, and I think that was part of it. Just I had such a wide range of stuff, which I think is one of my strengths. Like there are a lot of people that have kind of odd lifting talents, or even just in actual strength sports, they have their best lifts. A lot of people are really good at one type of thing. I feel like I'm really good at quite a few things. Obviously, I have things I'm better at than others, but like I'm pretty dang capable either in terms of silliness or actual strength capacity at just about anything. So I think that wide spectrum of entertainment is something that kind of sets me apart. Maybe that helped in that competition. Maybe it's helped in other little silly competitions. But
were you able to see some of the other submissions for that? Because that had to be the most like outrageous compilation of clips I've ever seen. Like it has to be crazy. What was the craziest lift that you saw in there? Besides your own, obviously.
Besides my own. Do you remember Bud Jeffries?
Oh, dude, yes, I had Bud back on the podcast like 4 years ago. I
got
love that, dude.
Second place, and I think that was literally a few months before he died. So like some of his last stuff was for that competition. He had like a 600-pound yoke on one shoulder, and he was doing target shooting with his pistol in the other hand, and shot 4 balloons. And he had a couple entries like that, which I feel like his might have been better overall, but maybe the thought was like, oh, it's Bud Jeffries, like he's a professional at this, like. He gets a bit of a downgrade points wise because it's his thing already. Like when let a new guy, take the stage for once. So that was pretty good. This was back when Mikey was really small, so it wasn't a huge number of entries. But plus, this was like 3 years ago, so I have a hard time remembering what exactly was submitted by everyone else. But
yeah, Tristan, have you ever dove into the Bud Jeffrey rabbit hole?
I have not.
Oh, dude, you would geek out because he was big into like when I had him on a podcast, he dove all into like his 7 like aspects of fitness, but one of them is like an accuracy piece. So like he will have like 600 pounds on his back and like do whips and like shoot things like while he's lifting, and it's like part of his training program. It's some of the most unbelievable stuff and like creative stuff you would never think of, and he's piecing it all together. He was a monster.
I'll definitely check that out. That's I'll get the piece on the table up and running for it.
Yeah. I think he had like the first is that not. He had the first 1,000-pound squat of unequipped, by a natural or something like that. Like, granted, it was like I think he had pins bombs up squat, which I think is just strictly harder than a regular squat. But like, still, I think he went start from like basically at depth with a like buffalo bar or something off the pins in his rack, and then 1,000 pounds going up. Which
try to get that going from a dead stop.
Yeah, I mean, a competition squat, but I don't think that's the way he did it disqualifies him from having that first unequipped 1,000-pound squat.
Yeah,
I think it was just strictly harder.
When you were talking about the like your technical, I kind of had this word in my head of like the technical okayness, where you realize that your lifts aren't going to look like other people's lifts, and when people say things are dangerous, like for you, it's just how it looks because of your body, and there's a lot of people like that. Did you have a moment, like did you have a light bulb moment where it became okay for you to be okay with that? You know what I mean? Where because like I feel like so many people, especially nowadays when there's so much information, they get fucking trapped in that, man. Like there'll be a tall, super long, beautiful athlete like yourself, and there'll be some short ass strength coach, some squatty ass strength coach telling them they're doing everything wrong, and they can't like break out of that mold because it's all they've been told for so long. Like, did you have a process, or are you just naturally like stubborn? Like, no, you're an idiot. Like, what was that?
More so the latter. I think I was spared like the worst because when I first started, like I wasn't like looking for information or I wasn't like consulting other people. I was just going to the gym and doing it. I had a buddy in college that lifted more than me, and I was like, I want to start going to the gym. Just going to the gym's a good. It'll get me in shape, and I don't know, maybe I'll be cooler. And like I hang out with my buddy. Like it was very like. Not big aspirations. I was just wanting to hit the gym. So he gave me like a generic bro split. And I just did that without much thought for like 2 years on and off at, during college. So when I was still in my beginner phase and, most impressionable, most, self-doubt, there wasn't anyone telling me I was necessarily doing it wrong. I just kind of did it. And like, I assumed I couldn't squat because I tried squatting. It didn't feel right. I'm like, oh, I can't squat. Big deal. And obviously I would back, eventually and figured out how to squat kind of, and then, came full circle. I don't really squat all period. And I haven't squatted a straight barbell in like 5 years, ever since I discovered there were other barbells that work much, much better. So, yeah, mostly I just felt like, this is working for me. I'm going to keep doing it. There are times and places for, obviously taking people's advice, like more against a strongman, there is technique to a lot of strongman lifts. And if you work with someone who's competent, they will give you technique advice that is suited for you. And if it isn't working, okay, like this is, generally good advice, not going to work for you, we'll move on. So I've been incorporating, tips from actual experts, and it's going, give me some good mileage on my lifts, but listening to the crowd or like listening to like a generic textbook article, any kind of generic advice, which is, targeted at that more archetypical middle of the line, like everything average person, is not going to apply to someone who's an outlier in some area for obvious reasons.
Yeah, and that process of like what you were just saying, like I think this takes a lot of people a long time to realize is like just because there is an article or a piece of advice does not mean it works for you, And like so many people will like read it and like, fuck, I gotta go do it this way.
Yeah.
And just continue like you see it like it doesn't feel good, it doesn't look good, you don't lift more weights. Like why do you keep trying it that way? It's like it's okay to let go of that information and try something new.
I think and this doesn't apply to lifting, this applies to literally everything. People, not just like everyone, but like people in general, it's a human condition. Maybe it's, our brain power, inquisitiveness, our, Homo sapiens, human wisdom. We don't want to like not know things. We don't want to be wrong about things. So if we don't know something, we want an answer. And as soon as we get an answer, we want to take that as the correct answer, because acknowledging that might not be right means we don't actually know things. So people are really quick to latch on to the first idea they get, and they're very reluctant to let go of it until, it's either forced out of them or they have no choice but not to believe it. And that applies to lifting too. People don't know what they're doing. They read some stuff. They bring it in. It sounds right to them. That becomes their worldview, and it becomes very hard to shake that initial wrong premise once it's kind of sunken in. And, a lot of people, some people can like, critical think their way out of, what, this probably wasn't right. I was wrong. It's okay. I'm going to move on. They end up succeeding. The people who really lock into some random generic beginner idea and never let go of it, well, they're probably not going to go very far. And that's fine. That's on them.
And what's your process like personally, or maybe with your people that you train and work with, like of it's working or it's not, or because like when you do switch something up, let's say like in any sports, any technical thing that you're doing, like you do switch something up, there is going to be a learning curve. There's going to be something that you're fixing and understanding like, okay, this is a time where it's a learning curve for something long term, and I actually do need to go fix how I'm pulling, or I do need to fix how I'm squatting, versus it's not actually working. Like what's kind of the process when you're working with somebody or you're working with yourself to realize, okay, I do need to take a step back here to work on this, and it's something I actually need to work on, or it's just not working.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very much like an kind of autodidact kind of person. I think you learn by experience. I don't think you can get some ideas to try from, exterior sources, but at the end of the day, you need to try it. You need to figure out what works. You need to build up your experiential data and, work off that, because you are a population of one and you need your own, specific training advice, but no one else can give you, barring some very rare, very experienced, very talented coaches. So when I'm training myself, I figure like, is this working? Okay, try new stuff. Is it working? Hold on to it. If it's not working, no. And I'll be the first to admit that I will cling to things that I know that might not work so good, but I'm just, familiar and comfortable with them. Like I do it all the time. Like I'm not immune to that. I'll tell people not to do it. I'll do it. Do as I say, not as I do. But when I work with other people, like I acknowledge that I am not the world's most talented coach. I don't study that stuff. I don't work with people that often. Like I know my limitations when it comes to teaching other people. So if someone comes to me like, hey, I need to work on this lift, my first thing I do is I'll look what they're doing. Like sometimes there are very, very clear beginner, simple changes they can make. And if they have something that's just like totally wrong or like a very obvious problem with their technique, I will tell them to correct that. Once we've gotten like past like the most bare bones, like you're obviously doing X, Y, Z wrong, and we move into some more nuanced areas, well, I'm not going to probably give that many specific form tips or like training advice. What I am going to do is I'm going to give them a pile of resources that I think will work pretty well for just anyone, that will introduce them to new types of training ideas, new training methodologies. So we'll let them kind of explore their technique and tell them, do all this. It's going to work pretty good, but I want you to pay attention to what's working, what's not working, and, build up your own internal knowledge, because that's what's going to carry you through intermediate to advanced to elite level lifting. You have to know yourself, or you have to have a really, really, really good coach, which there are not that very many of them. And you're better off, trusting yourself with that one.
Dude, and that process, like, I think that's something that people jack up a ton. It's like, I made a post on this or a video on this where I was talking about how like you're so much better off pursuing some KPI, like some ridiculous, I want to deadlift 600 pounds rather than I want to deadlift perfectly. And you see it like,
Hmm.
dude, I started Oli lifting last year and there is not a more miserable, I'm sure powerlifting is the same. I just haven't got into the powerlifting world or the
Hmm.
strongman world, but like there's no more miserable group of people than the Oli lifters and their technique, man. It's like, because it's such a weird, like, you can pursue
Hmm.
a thing and work on your technique and still get a stimulus done in that training session.
Yep.
Or you can just do technique and like it's going to change and it's going to falter when you start
Hmm.
adding weight anyways. And it seems like such a backwards kind of thought process of that active experimentation while you're pursuing
Yeah.
something, and it's way more motivating. And it's so silly because you're still learning. Like you're
Hmm.
you're you're gonna learn what's wrong, and that doesn't mean it's bad. Like you learn that technique doesn't work for me, or I'm doing that wrong, and I got to go fix it now if I want to go clean more weight, if I want to go reach my
Yep.
goal. And I just think a lot of coaches specifically, and I think it is like an importance thing. It's a comfort thing of I have these answers, I know these answers, I need to like get my athletes these answers, and it just seems like a shortcut that leads to a lot of long-term failures.
Yeah. And it's also just because, like, I mean, I'm going to throw a lot of coaches on their bus because honestly, I very much do not like the over. I mean, this isn't directed at every single coach ever. It's directed at coaching and personal training and any flavor of that in general. I think the vast majority of them do not offer anything that's actually worth what they're card charging. Not because they're overcharging, but just because it's not worth a reasonable living wage. Because a lot of the information you need for 95% of people is incredibly basic. It's available freely online, and the better off with just being told, hey, here's your basic guidelines, go try hard, and you're done. Anyone beyond that is either a very talented coach that can get past those initial guidelines and can actually analyze what's going on and deliver very useful information, or they're an accountability buddy, which that has its own place, but they're not really a personal trainer anymore. They're more like a personal motivator, or you just need someone to like have the cost of the money they're putting in to make them go out and actually exercise, in which case I'll do that. If you want to pay me money, I'll tell you that you have to go work out because you paid me money. I'll do that. I'll collect that pay. I'll charge you half what a personal trainer does, and I'll make you have that accountability buddy. But at the end of the day, most coaches are not offering anything useful. They're offering, either very generic advice, which is, super valuable online. People are either not aware that's so simple, or they are just like, I won't say lazy, because obviously sometimes at the end of the day, like, people pay money for all kinds of very simple things to get done for them. And that's fine, as long as they know that's what they're doing. But I don't think many trainers present themselves as that. They present themselves as having this arcane, this secret knowledge that you can't get anywhere. If you want to succeed in your lifting, you need me. Well, no, you could probably watch a few YouTube videos, get the basics, and then just hit the gym, try hard, and you make just as much, if not more, success. So when they're trying to kind of back up, because if they just gave you like, yeah, eat some protein, like, try and gain a pound a week, go hit some compound lifts, like, that doesn't sound like something you should pay for. So they need to present something more complicated that seems like they're getting their money's worth. And that's where it comes in with like these form drills and these weird lifts. And it's like this very specific advice, like, we're going to do it exactly this way. And you think, oh, this must be like the best program ever. No, it's kind of just a bunch of made up nonsense, and it doesn't really get you anywhere. And yes, it's probably a bit different than where you're initially talking, because like maybe those coaches, aren't trying to scam people, or not trying to, like, maybe they're unaware themselves, but really just dialing in on the form, especially because it's so individually dependent, past some very basic like core principles, is not the best way to do it. Like, get them with the most basic form of the lift generally, so they can kind of do it. Let them work on that for years even. Then when they're like a competent intermediate, burgeoning on advanced, then you can come back in and start doing the fine tuning, because the fine tuning on an inexperienced person is largely wasted, and it's just going to confuse the process.
It's funny you say that, because I see that from the endurance side and like the endurance world a lot, with like people getting in certain bike positions and stuff. And there is
Mm-hmm.
an arbitrarily best position that you can put somebody in, but when they're new, if you put them in that position,
Yeah.
they like can't do any of the things that are
Mm-hmm.
required to actually make it good. And I like how you said that the fine tuning is largely wasted. It's like, yeah,
Yep.
let them develop it for years and actually get the fine tuning. But I feel
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of people, do you think it is pay coaches because they're afraid to do the wrong thing? Like, they know that they
Oh,
should do
absolutely.
some
Mm-hmm.
lifting, and it's like, well,
100%.
I don't want to just do a 3x10 squat, bench press, deadlift, because I'm trying to have high goals as an athlete for
Mm-hmm.
whatever sport it is. So I need to pay somebody. Is
Mm-hmm.
that what you think the
I
majority of
think,
people
yeah,
comes
it's
from?
people, they think it's more complicated, or they think they're going to get a better end result, or They just, need that, accountability thing, which I was talking before, which it's all fine. Like, I get it. It's just, I wish people understood that they didn't need that.
Yeah.
And like, sure, that can listen to me, but that's not marketable. It's not, there's no market. There's no money to be made on the simple basics, which is why they're not very popular.
But the point that you mentioned before, where it's like people pay for that, like this is the thing that bugs me about strength conditioning is like people pay to get shit done for them all the time that they don't need to pay for, right?
Yep.
Like fucking even like clean your house, so you can clean your own house, right? Like people pay for that all the time.
Delivery, DoorDash food,
food,
time.
Like all the time. You don't have to make it special. Like, hey, this is the program that's gonna get you to work hard over a long period of time because whatever you believe in it, it's just simple for you, like. Yeah, you don't have to lie to the people. That's what drives me insane. Is like when we just start lying, we start fibbing. It's like you don't have to. People buy DoorDash all the fucking time when they don't have to, and they do it because they want to, right? Like that's the biggest thing. Is like people should want to buy your product. Stop making them like. And obviously that's horrible. Like the business, like when you talk about advertising, the whole thing is like make people need your product. But it's like it just seems so fucking scummy sometimes. Some of the stuff we say.
I mean, it's kind of a predatory industry. To be completely honest, like. I mean, not everyone's so off. Like I said, this is not applying to every single coach ever. It's just the industry as a whole is predatory. You need to prey on people's insecurities. You need to present that you have information that they don't. You need to make them come to you and come back over and over and over again, which is why if you go to like any chain gym that offers like personal training, what they're doing 9 times out of 10 is like circuit stuff that isn't really working anything. It's just a general kind of conditioning deal almost because it burns a lot. It feels like you've accomplished something and it makes you want to come back. It's like, oh, I must be getting good results because everything like this felt hard. Well, yeah, if you run around to every machine like blasting reps of 10 and like with no rest, it's going to push your probably shitty conditioning because, the average person has absolutely horrible cardio and it's going to burn your muscles because of new stimulus and it's going to feel like it's working. Is it better than nothing? Yeah, probably. Is it, fine-tuned good coaching? No, not really. You could just go into the gym and like go around, like play with all the machines randomly. You get the same feeling, you get the same stimulus, you get the same results. But maybe, just the idea that like, oh, I have this person tell me what to do. Like they must know that like authority figure makes you feel more confident, more comfortable, or, makes you go to the gym. I don't know. So like there's a reason for all of it. I just don't think it's the most effective way to make people stronger or better or, more trained.
And so we're talking about all the like kind of basic stuff. And then we go to your page and there's like so many cool fucking lifts like on there, like just the awesome stuff. When like somebody's looking at your page, like what do you think, is there a benefit to doing all of these, let's say non-functional, non-traditional type lifts? Is it entertainment? Is it that it just keeps them showing, like it gives them a piece of candy? Like that's one thing I notice with my athletes. If I have them Zercher squat, they think they have the most specialized program in the world because it's something different. You know, like it's a fucking squat pattern. That's what we're doing there. Like that's all we're trying to accomplish. Really does not get more complex than that. What's kind of your thought process around these lifts? Have you found that doing some of this non-traditional stuff has helped with the traditional stuff? Do you think you could have got the same results, or do you think it's a psychological thing if you would have burnt out and not been able to push as long as you could have pushed if you weren't doing some of the things for fun? Like what's kind of how do you wrap that all up?
Well, I think we have to kind of break down some of the lifts you see there because there are just they're like odd lifts and they're old lifts and they're like something like a Zercher squat. That is a legitimate movement. A Jefferson deadlift is a legitimate movement. There's some stuff I do. There are legitimate movements. They're just a little bit atypical. Balancing on a fire hydrant to do a bench press, there is no training value in that. That is 100% entertainment. There isn't a secret like benefit there. No, like a lot of stuff I do, it makes a good video. Like there is absolutely no reason you have to put that in your training routine unless you're like, I want to try it because it seems silly and fun, or you want to provide entertainment for people. There is some stuff I do that might have some purpose, like Zercher deadlift, Zercher squat. Like there's a place for that. Jefferson, I think it's a place for. I think everyone should, provided they're not constrained by competition rules, to try all the deadlift stances, pick the one that works best for them, and just go with that, because they're all going to do roughly the same thing. But most people, at best, try two, sumo and conventional. They might not even know that hack and Jefferson are an option, or that it's going to do roughly the same thing, or it might be better for them, because everyone's going to have one stance they're the best in. And for a lot of people, it's probably not sumo or conventional. It's probably one of the other two, but they just aren't used in competition. They're not popular, they're not common. Most people never even try them and realize, oh, maybe this is better for me. But when it comes to like in general, like when I first started this, I would try to justify, from an actual training perspective, a lot of stuff I did more so. Now I'm like, it's mostly just fun. I think the value comes from not necessarily doing a weird lift, but doing a large variety of lifts. Because if you hyper fixate and hyper focus and get really good a couple of lifts because you're a power lifter and all you know is squat, bench, deadlift, and it's like some accessories for that, or all you know is clean, jerk, and snatch, or all you know is your core group of lifts, you lose a bit of flexibility, both literally and metaphorically, when it comes to approaching new positions. Like if you're fixated to a few movement patterns and you really dial in them, well, you don't really have the adaptability. If I'm trying something new every week, yes, I'm not going to necessarily get better at any individual lift among those because I'm only doing it one time, but I'm getting better at doing new lifts in general. So I can approach a new movement pattern and adapt to it a little bit more quickly than regular people because I've done so many different things. There's little bits and pieces that do carry over, and the body is just more like ready to try something new in general because there's a kind of bodily awareness that you build up doing a bunch of weird lifts, that when you do more weird lifts, well, guess what? You're figuring out really fast, you're more adaptable. And is that good for anything other than just its own purposes? Is it better for, approaching actual training or like real world or just is it better for doing more weird lifts? I don't know. If you're going to do weird lifts, it's good to be good at them. If you're going to be thrown into a weird position in the real world, yeah, it's probably good to be ready for that. Like an injury, because I think a lot of injuries, if they aren't coming from a chronic or an acute load management issue, or coming from being thrown into a position you're not ready for at a weird time that you're not expecting. So, constantly throwing yourself in weird positions kind of prepares you for that. Like I haven't been injured much at all in lifting or in the real world or in general, like because I'm used to stuff. Granted, part of that is just, having stronger connective tissue, stronger muscle, stronger bone density, et cetera, from lifting in general. But I think a little bit of that is that I'm just, that much more flexible and adaptable, which I'd say is probably the only benefit of having a wide variety of weird lifts you do.
Yeah, and I see this a lot with the powerlifters I work with. Like the biggest thing that I give them is just a fucking like a break from just running their face into the wall of a thing that they're stuck on. So many of these powerlifters I work with, you just give them a couple different deadlift variations for a couple weeks. And because like that's the thing, like at some point, if you want to be a 1% or a 1%er, you have to NOS. Like you have to run your head through the wall and you have to perfect the lift and you have to get after super specific things and have a hyper specific like training program.
Yep.
I think the issue we run into is a lot of our programs are 52 weeks of hyper-specific training, and we wonder why these athletes either like feel like shit all the time because they're moving in the same exact way. Like that's like the way how much better my back feels by just adding in slight variations of a squat or a deadlift, just like slight tweaks. It's like I feel amazing compared to when I didn't do that. And then you also have the psychological component of just like not hating yourself and not running like. Fuck, dude, I have to hit a 3-rep max on this deadlift, and it's just not the day. Whereas if I'm hitting a hack deadlift and I have no idea, or I don't have enough, I think most of it's, especially for powerlifters, like an emotional attachment to that. I can just get after that training session that day and get a high level of stimulus in and not want to kill myself when I leave the gym, And I think there's a big benefit to being able to leave the gym and feeling good about yourself. And just doing that for certain blocks of your training to give yourself a break and then NOSing when you need to NOS. You got a meet coming up and you need to prep for 12 weeks or you need to prep for 20 weeks, whatever it is leading up to it. That's okay. But then you have 30 other weeks in the year that we can build a general base and not run our face into the wall every single week of the year.
Yeah. There's a couple of things in there that I'm not sure if you've seen, but I have a whole Google Drive full of, I guess you can call them articles are written. And like the things you're describing there are at least several of those articles. From the one point of view, I like to make a big distinction between the ideas of growing strength and showing strength, which the program that peaks you for a meet is not the program that's actually going to make you stronger. It's the program that lets you peak for the meet. It lets you hyper fine tune your technique and get ready for your 3 big lifts. It's not building the foundation you need to raise those 3 big lifts in the long term. You need to peak before the meet, make sure you got your technique fine tuned. You make sure you got all your muscles ready for that 1 rep max. But then once that's over, you need to go back to a building phase, which is going to actually give you more muscle and more strength to work with in the long term. So the next time you peak it up, it's higher than the last time. Because if you never actually build anything and you just keep peaking, well, where are you peaking? You don't have any more material to work with. You need to go back, build, and then come back to your peaking if you want to actually lift more next time. And part of that is, it's a completely different kind of training program. Like if you're in your off season, you probably shouldn't be hitting your main lifts as much, if at all. You should be trying to build muscle because the best things for building muscle are probably not hyper fixating on squat, bench, deadlift. There's probably other stuff you need. And, the benefits of building muscle aside, if you're constantly hitting the exact same movement patterns over and over again, like you said, you're stressing every single tissue in the exact same way. And that's how you get a chronic load management issue. You're going to continuously overload the same joints, the same connective tissues, the exact same way. You're never going to give them a break, and you can give them a break just by doing a slightly different movement pattern. But if you don't do that, you're going to wear out the one little part of it every time when you have all this other fresh stuff ready to go, and you're going to end up with injury. So you avoid that by, rotating stuff around. You don't get as much overuse. You don't get as much, chronic load management issues, and you're good to go long-term. And the other side of that, like you said, is mental. If you're only ever doing 3 lifts, well, you know exactly what you can do in those 3 lifts. And you always have to, to hit a PR, you need to be putting yourself through physical hell to get to PR, because you've already put yourself through physical hell to get that PR last time. You try a new lift that you haven't touched before, you have a lot more wiggle room to get that PR, to get that good feeling, and get the better physical stimulus, get that new physical stimulus, get the new mental stimulus, and feel like, hey, I hit a PR. That's cool. I feel motivated. I feel excited for my next session, and it didn't cost you like a shit ton of recovery. So like everything you said, everything you said basically is same things I think.
That was almost what I was just going to ask, because like one of the things for like just switching up a squat pattern from like even just a back squat to a front squat or researcher squat was almost the auto regulation like, because it was baked into it. Like I don't quite know what I'm capable of here.
Yes, 100%.
I can't like physically do it because the movement pattern I don't have all the neurological adaptations. I've not done it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so it's just doing it feels good, and I can like not have to push as hard. So it's like almost a way to self-program deloads without having to tell their athlete, oh, you need a break. It's like, I don't know, just try a different movement, get competent at this different movement. That's the way I've always saw it.
A new movement in your training program, you become kind of more skill gated than you do actual strength gated, which lets you advance really quickly, because it's a lot faster to learn than it is to build new muscle. And it lets you, not blast yourself. You can go as hard as you want, but the overall physical cost is probably a little bit less, because eventually you just become like an inefficient form and you're going to fall apart there, rather than, pushing every single muscle fiber to its absolute peak because you have perfected the form. So there's all kinds of benefits to, going off script for a little bit, which I think we just generally call periodization, which is usually accepted as a good thing, except for people tend to have a very kind of limited idea of what periodization can or should look like. And they just end up doing a different rep range, when in reality, they could be doing a totally different movement pattern, or even a totally different kind of training. Like, fucking do a bodybuilding block. Like, go download a John Mel's program, run that for 12 weeks, give all your tendons a break from lifting heavy squat, bench, dead, build some new muscles, get some new ideas, have some fun. And you can come back and you can go back to your squat, bench, and deadlift. It's still going to be there. You're not going to forget how to do it. You're never going to be able to, like, you're not going to lose it. It's like riding a bike. You're going to be fine. That's something new for once.
And the trying something new in the skill, like the skill periodization piece too, is like, I think something that I have noticed within the last like 4 or 5 years. And this is in any sport that I've been playing, or the Oli lifts is another really good example of it. But it's like you pick up on things like when you're Oli lifting differently, or like one of the things in like slow pitch softball, I'm swinging a heavier bat or a shorter bat. It's like you feel something differently. Like, okay, I like that feel. There's something there. Like when I'm Oli lifting, we were doing that. I was doing like these one-handed snatches, and I was like, oh man, there's something that I'm feeling right now that I want to bring to my real snatches. And when I had that light bulb moment that I wasn't going to have just running my face into the snatch, I went back to snatch and I PR'd. I was like, this is kind of sick. Like, there's so much benefit to that feel base side of lifting, and I mean, it's kind of a built-in constraint-led like technical cue that you're giving yourself to be able to feel something differently, and then you can bring it back to, like you were saying, your hyper-specific lifts that are not going anywhere. But I don't know. I feel like so many of my athletes have had so many more light bulb moments the more that I branch them out and allow them to like try different tools in different ways. And then we go back, because dude, that's just something that's like, when you approach it in a different way, it's like they're not working hard. Like that's always like the pushback in some regard. Like the moral like pushback is, yeah, but they're not training hard. They're training silly. It's like, yeah, but they're PRing. Like they're getting better results. They go back to their thing, and like we're jumping higher, we're sprinting faster, and we're feeling better, and we're lifting more weight. It's like, I don't know. Like it seems to be working in that regard, because they're picking up on some of these technical cues that I don't know if I could shove down their throat or make them feel like, I don't know if you can replace but with a technical cue of a feel that you give an athlete. And once they have that feel, and again, some of them don't fucking work. That's the thing too. Like, and being all right with that as a coach is something I think a lot of coaches are not all right with. Of like, I'll give an athlete a certain lift or a certain like drill to do, an exercise, and they don't get any feel from it. And I'm like, okay, like we still got the stimulus of that lift in, and you didn't have that light bulb moment. But the 20% of the time that we do get that light bulb moment, man, that's our exponential gain that we're going for in these patterns.
Yeah, there's like two things. Like, I mean, whenever like a newer lifter comes to talk to me, like I have a playbook for how to build a strong intermediate lifter that's going to look the same for almost everyone, regardless of what their goal is at a starting point. Like every beginner, I'm probably going to give an incredibly basic forced linear periodization program to run, because when you're a brand new lifter, you just need to learn how to try. That is the only thing you have to worry about, because this is not a moral failing. It's not like you're lazy. No, you physically need to learn how to try, because trying hard and physical exertion is a skill that you do not have if you never had to learn it. Now, maybe if you played sports as a kid, like how to push yourself physically, you can kind of skip this. You can scoot that. But if you've been sedentary your entire life, you just need to be forced to try. And it's not like, oh, you're lazy, you're dumb, you're bad. No, this is a skill you've never learned. You need to learn it. And once you've learned how to try, we can move on to other things, because until you're actually pushing your body, you're not going to see any actual physical adaptation, or at least very, very little. You need to train your mind before you can train your body. So once you get that out of the way with a forced linear periodization, that's going to make them try by lifting more weight every week, even if it's just adding your 5 pounds, starting strength style. Then once we kind of cap that out, the next stage is going to be essentially giving them a big long list of programs that have kind of wildly different plans, and they're going to run all of them. And some of them might work great, some of them might not work that great, but every single one of them is going to introduce them to a bunch of different ideas. And if they're at all smart, they're going to pay attention to, I like this bit of this program, I like this bit of this program, I like this little tidbit, I like this movement, I like this split, I like this training philosophy. And by the end of the years of running these different programs, they're going to know all the bits that work for them, and they can bring that back into either being more selective in the pre-written programs they take, or writing their own program, which I would not suggest until you're like 5 or 6 years in, if that. Like I tried to write my first program like 2 or 3 years into serious training, and that was the least productive year of training I've ever had. And then I stepped back and I ran some more programs. And when I came back after like 3 years of that, 6 years in, then I got a little bit farther, kind of playing my own program game. So, this kind of summarizes all the ideas you had. Like that is what I think the model for almost any new lifter should look like. And the other side of that is kind of like, oh, sorry, you want to jump in on that thought?
Oh, you mentioned how just like learning to push was a skill. One of the things that I've been wondering and have been seeing some people talk about lately was like lifting heavy is also a skill.
Mm-hmm.
Like not so everyone does all the work that's needed, and then they'll do the one day out of the 12-week cycle of like PR day. And it's like they haven't really come near that 1 rep max. So they may be doing 3 to 5 rep maxes, and then it's like, oh, now this is way heavier. And I don't know if I actually possess the skill to do a 1 rep max. It's like, how do you build that skill component into training, you think?
That's why you have a peaking program before when you need to do a 1 rep max, like in competition. Like you need to train heavy singles, and honestly, heavy triples is probably close enough for most purposes. But at the end of the day, you need practice with singles. So do a program that's going to have you be exposed to heavy singles. It doesn't have to be an absolute 1 rep max, but like 90%, 95%. Your program should have some singles like that to get you ready for the slight nuances and differences in technique, and more importantly, mindset for a heavy single, which, being a deadlift specialist, it's especially important in deadlift, because unlike your other big lifts, which are mostly top down, where you kind of have that whole descent phase before you get to the hardest part to like get you locked in mentally, with deadlift, you need to go 0 to 60. You need to go from like limp to the hardest part of the lift. And that is a big mental hurdle, which you need to train for specifically.
And for the deadlift specifically, I haven't heard of like the mental thought process of going 0 to 60 in that kind of regard, the way that you phase that. Is it literally just heavy singles? Like, when you work with people that are like trying to peak for a deadlift, like, is there an approach you tell? Is it just a thought process? Like how are you building up that thought process? I've never heard that kind of like that skill set be framed in the deadlift. That's kind of cool.
To be clear, like I purposely, I don't generally train people. Like if someone asks me a question, I'll give them my best answer. I'll give them a consultation. I do not do like 1-to-1 like continuous training, because honestly, like that's a skill set I don't think I have, at least not to the point where it'd be worth like charging for. So I'm like, hey, I have ideas. I'll give you the thoughts I have. I can maybe point you to someone I think is a competent coach, but I'm not going to be your full-time coach, because I don't think I can give you what you need to succeed. And if you are at the stage where I can give you what you need to succeed, well, then you probably also don't need to be paying for it. You can just read some articles online. You're probably gonna get the same ideas. But when I'm training for myself, my deadlift training does look like that. When I'm getting ready for I just had a max deadlifting competition where I got a national record. My training for that was every week I just went to the gym on Friday and I did a heavy deadlift. I did a single at 405. I did a single at 495. I'm losing track of my plate math. 585, 675, 765, and then maybe a jump to like 800 or 825, 835, and I just did my singles. Now, if some days I'm at like tops at the side, okay, I'm going to do this for a double. I'm going to do it for draw. I like how this feels. One day I says, fuck, I'm going to go for a 7 or 8. Like, but most of the time, it was just hitting a heavy single and be like, okay, that one felt pretty good. I'm going to do a jump. And once it started feeling really, really hard, I just cut off there. And that's all it was. Like, it's not a smart training program. It's not like deeply thought about, but it works because it gets me used to heavy singles. It doesn't completely blast up my fatigue because one single at like 95% isn't particularly fatiguing if you only do the one a week. And it gets you, lets you train a skill pattern, lets you get the confidence up. And by the time you get competition day, you have the extra adrenaline, you have a little bit of extra rest because you probably, hopefully you took the last week off of deadlifts, and you get your PR and you get your record, ideally, which I did.
What was the heaviest you touched on your deadlift before you ripped out at the meet? And did you know like you were gonna like what number you were gonna hit at that meet, or was it like
So at the meet, the national record I need was the national record was 855, so I need 860. And generally, when I do heavy deadlifts, I want a very like once I come down from a heavy deadlift, I don't go back up. So I had the same competition last year, the same meet, just 2024 for 2025, and they used kind of like the powerlifting rules. So there was flight. So you did your first attempt, you wait for everyone to do their first attempt, you did your second attempt, wait for everyone to do the second attempt, come back for your third attempt. So there's like 20-30 minutes between reps. And last year, like I thought it was gonna be rising bar. That's kind of more common in strongman, and that completely screwed me up. I did my first attempt at like 800, and by the time I came back to try and blast 900, because this was a much bendier bar, so I had a higher number of attempts. Like I already come down, I was crashed, didn't go. So I knew like I have to take a really easy first attempt and get that record on the second attempt, because after that one heavy lift, I'm probably not going to do too good on my third attempt, and that's what happened. I didn't get my third attempt because I knew it was going to happen. Like I walked up, I'm like, yeah, it's not there. But I did pull the 860 I needed 3 weeks before. It was my second to last heavy deadlift set. Just to be confident, like, yep, I can do this. It went smoother. It was a lot easier. Honestly, like, I played it conservatively because I wanted to make sure I got the record. So I chipped it. With that rep, with how smooth it was, at least 880, maybe 900 was there. And I went back to try for 880 on my third attempt. But like I said, it came right down. So if I could, like, take 5 minutes and come right back, I would have absolutely hit 880. I have no doubt. But I just know how I respond physiologically heavy deadlifts. I know, like, yep, that's the constraints of the competition. I need to plan for that, which I did. And yes, maybe there's a more like beneficial way for me to do it, but that's not how that competition's set up. I need to find a competition that either offers the situation I need, or, just keep training until I'm more equipped to, come back from a short rest like that.
So you just did that big peaking block, and you mentioned before, like after that peaking block, it's now the time to go back and build
Yep.
mass. Like, what does that next spot look like? Because you just did that. So like, what's the next kind of block look like for you, and how long is that going to be, and how do you determine what it is, I guess?
I mean, well, to be fair, I take a very by ear approach to my training, which is probably not the most efficient one in the world, but I don't want to think about it too much. Like I just do what feels right. So like right now, I haven't done like heavy single deadlifts yet. Like I kind of want to see if I can get up to 600 by 20, because like 3-4 years ago I did 585 by 20, and that was back when I had more like long set deadlifts involved. My deadlift training used to be, for the longest time, 1 AMRAP a week. And what that weight would be kind of just randomly determined. But I would do one set. I grab the bar. I do as many reps as possible. And that was my entire deadlift training. So I do like, 650 for 13, 14. Or I do, the 575 for 18 or whatever. I do like one pretty heavy-ish set for like between 10 and 20 reps on most weeks. And that would be my entire training program. It worked really good. And eventually I just kind of got distracted by trying to do fun, heavy lifts, because I realized that you can't post a set. No one cares about a 20 rep set. People want to see a heavy single. So I did more heavy singles, and I kind of lost a little bit of that skill. So now that I have like more stuff to post, I can always just repost stuff. I mean, if I need content, or I can do other lifts that aren't just training. I have other ideas. Like I have some more fatigue to put towards actual deadlift training versus deadlift showing off. So I'm hoping I can get back to doing more longer sets to build up that conditioning, build up that work capacity, build up that efficient movement pattern, and maybe circle back to trying, beat a record I set 3 or 4 years ago, which would be cool. But I don't know. But that's just kind of like the current goal. It's not really a training thought. It's more like this is the goal I want to work on at the moment, which coincides with happening to be a pretty effective training program.
I know you. I know you mentioned that you don't want to win arguments on the internet, but I'm interested in the thought process of like you can't recover from deadlifts, and like the inherently like how deadlifts are super dangerous, but also
Mhm.
even people that don't say deadlifts are dangerous, their whole thing is like you can't recover from deadlifts. And like what I found is like people say this about squats, like it seems like
Mhm.
tall athletes say it about squats, short athletes say it about deadlifts. I'm like,
Mhm.
well, it might just be like it's not your lift that you need to
Yep.
push. Like I feel like personally, I could squat every day and be perfectly
Mhm.
fine. I deadlift. It takes a while for me to recover from, and
Yep.
I know that, and I just build my program around that. And it's like it seems pretty like it's gonna make common sense. Like I use what
Mhm.
works for me and what doesn't. But I feel like so many people are pushing. You can't recover from deadlifts. Like you can't do it. Like what's your thought process on that?
I mean, yes, deadlifts are very heavy lifts, so inherently they're going to be pretty fatiguing. Like the fatigue is mostly commensurate to the amount of weight lifted. I mean, there's obviously other factors, but that's a pretty big one. And the deadlift is one of the heaviest lifts you're going to do in the gym for a full range of motion. So yeah, it is fatiguing. Yes, you need to take that into account. And yes, you probably shouldn't be doing like a shit ton of deadlifts. There are some ways you can do it. There's ways to make it work, but you have to be thoughtful about it. So I kind of almost am in the same camp where I think you don't actually need to train deadlifts a ton to be good at deadlifts. You need to keep some of it in there to keep that technique in there, that kind of that mental fine tuning in there. But you shouldn't be. It shouldn't be like your main lower body workout because I don't think that is the most effective way to expend your energy. I think, for instance, if you're a power lifter and you're trying to get your squats and your deadlifts in, like those are lots of overlap, lots of the same muscles. You should be doing a lot more of your fatigue load into squats because I think they benefit more from repeated practice. I think they are more technical lifter. That might just be my proclivities talking because obviously I am built a deadlift. I am not built a squat. Obviously, I get more benefit out of practicing my weird squat than I do of my natural deadlift. But I think a lot of good firms kind of resemble that. Like you see less deadlift volume than squat volume. And I think it's because, yes, they're kind of right, but also they took it too far in the other direction. Like, yes, you should respect the deadlift. Yes, you should be thoughtful how much deadlift you use, especially when you become a stronger deadlifter. Because what people don't seem to realize is as you become stronger, it is more fatiguing. Like a higher strength level is more fatiguing even if you average out like the intensity, which is why like bare bones 5-3-1 Jim Wendler, that's not a good program for me. If you do just bare bones 5-3-1, like just the 5-3-1 sets, which is what he did when he was like an elite powerlifter, that's a terrible program for 95% of people. It was a good program for him because I don't know how much he was squatting and deadlifting. It was a lot. And if you're lifting those weights, you need less volume to, compensate for that. But a beginner with a lower relative lift is going to be able to do a lot more volume at their max capacity just because they aren't that strong. And they can't do that much damage with their weak lifts, which sounds a little bit patronizing, but it's just true. If you're a beginner, you can do a lot more volume. It's fine. You're not going to hurt yourself. You're not going to overly fatigue yourself. And by the time you become strong enough to actually need to worry about these things, you're probably going to know what you're doing, or at least hopefully you do.
Yeah, the pendulum swing is something that I mean, to feel like the strength conditioning, it's like we hit like one thing is it's technically right. Like there are
Yep.
certain things that are technically right, and then we go all the way the fuck over here, and it's like, bro, it doesn't need to be
Yep.
black and white. Like there's so much ground in between that we could actually use both sides of this
Yeah.
argument rather
You
than
kind
just
of need experience to calibrate where you should be with this new tidbit. And most people online do not have experience because they're just kind of talking out their ass, which that's again not limited to lifting. That's a pretty typical thing because people just want to they want to contribute to the conversation. Yes, I'm guilty of this. I try to be aware of it on topics I'm not as expert on. I still catch myself just talking about things I don't really know about just because I sound authoritative, just because I want to contribute to the conversation. Hear myself talk, like it happens, but that's a proclivity that everyone has, and it's very much enabled online. So you're going to hear a lot of inexperienced opinions based on next to nothing, and they're going to kind of blot out the real advice, and you're going to end up with a bunch of dumb information in a comment section every single time. Which I know what happens. I'm not really blaming any particular person, but come on, guys. If we could all just agree to only talk about things we actually know about and have the wisdom to know what that actually is, and not just think we know about things, the world would probably be a better place. But that's not the world we live in.
I mean, you don't learn from the comment section.
Not usually, no. I get an interesting snapshot of where the general population is at vis-a-vis lifting experience, but I don't learn anything personally.
Bro, I'm hopping on. I've been doing YouTube for the past year, and that comment section, dude, is some of the most insane. I think Reddit's probably the only one worse than YouTube, where it's like some of the advice that people will say on there. I'm like, this is so bad.
Yeah,
like you were so confident in that you typed
Yeah.
it up and posted it with your real name on there. Like, This is not good.
That's the problem with Reddit. People like, at least when people leave a dumb comment on any other platform, it's usually short and like it's really obviously dumb. But on Reddit, having been on Reddit for many years before I eventually kind of stopped, like they will expound. They are a certain kind of stupid where they are well spoken or experienced enough to be dangerous and take their lack of expertise and just build up into something even more stupid. They're midwits, to quote a word I heard once. They're not dimwits, they're midwits, which is almost worse because they can almost sound like they know what they're talking about.
It's a sauna bro syndrome. It's like, hey, bro, nothing makes me want to die more than sitting in a sauna with some bro that just listened to a Huberman podcast and is telling everybody about the 4 supplements they need to take as they're like a skinny, fat person. I was like, bro, what? Like, I know the way you were reciting this information, you did not think about this. Like, this is literally just like you downloaded it in your brain and now you are exporting it into other people's brains. I'm like, what are we doing? The one thing that I had with the deadlifts is when you're trying to build this up, what is the accessory part look like? Like, are you more just like a big lift, like main lift type person, or are you ripping accessories that you feel like are kind of important to develop the deadlift?
I mostly accessories because honestly, maybe it's just because my anatomy, like I'm not necessarily built to do a lot of the heavy compounds. Like I find if I just focus on, yes, blasting the heavy compounds does work pretty good, but it's also less sustainable for me. Like, especially as you get older and you accumulate. I don't have any like real bad recurring injuries, but after 10 years of lifting, some things are a little bit worn down. Like it happens. You have to be a little bit more thoughtful on all your various joints and whatnot. Like probably not as bad as most people, or even people that don't lift, but it's still there. It's still a consideration I have to make as I enter my middle age of lifting. So I like machines more because they are kind of a little bit lower impact, a little lower stress. Like I can really focus on what I actually need to hit versus grinding unrelated joints into the ground just to get stimulus on certain muscles. So a lot of machine stuff, a lot of more not straight isolations, but more isolative in RDL versus a deadlift. So that is kind of the core and basically how my training look these days and has looked for quite a while now is I have 3 core days regardless of what I'm doing. And those are just kind of like body ability, strength days, just upper or lower arms. And that's just kind of make sure I'm getting enough stimulus to keep things where they are, hopefully grow them up, relatively low impact, relatively easy, but keeps the body sustained. 2 days are just kind of either for rest or odd stuff or making videos or just whatever, because I need room to. If I try and add a video onto a regular training day, that eventually becomes too much. So I set aside 2 days. If I need to rest, great. If I need to do something that's not lifting, great. If I need to balance the fire hydrant on my head and do a squat, yeah, sure, I can do it on my rest day, quote unquote. And then the remaining 2 days were just kind of for working on specific goals, but they've kind of become de facto strongman days ever since I started taking that more seriously. So if I'm in prep for a competition, I'm just running the events on those days. And that is kind of a mixed bag because, it's going to depend on when I'm actually training at the time.
One thing I'm curious about, especially with people who are in the strongman or just absolutely actually wicked strong circuit, do you incorporate any cardio training or any aerobic training into that? Or is it pretty much just get strong and moving those rocks is the cardio?
Yeah, I mean, you don't need a ton of cardio for strongman, to be completely honest. You need a bare bones amount. You can't be completely, gasping and wheezing when you do the 100-foot frame run or whatever. But there's nothing in strongman that's particularly cardio demanding. Conditioning to a degree, yeah. If you are gassing out super duper quick, you're not going to make it through a minute's worth of lifting, and that is going to limit how much you can overall lift. But that's a pretty low bar to clear in terms of cardiovascular endurance. Is being able to do stuff for a minute. So I don't do. I mean, it would probably help. I don't think it would hurt to do cardio. I probably should, but it's on a long list of things I know would probably be beneficial, but I don't like doing, and frankly, I just don't want to do. And I don't do them. So flexibility and mobility, I don't want those enough to actually do them, so I don't do them. Cardio, I fucking hate it. I don't need the benefits enough. I don't do it. I go on long walks with my dog. I get some cardio out of jiu-jitsu. Between those two, we're going to call that cardio. It's a good enough day. It's enough for general health. It's enough to let me last for a fucking minute in strongman, and I don't need anything past that. I really don't. And then I try to make myself do grip specific training, and again, I don't do as much of that as I'd like to because it's really freaking boring.
But yeah, even what you said though, that's, I mean, when I build out my athletes cardio program, it's I have them play the sport a bunch, so in a bunch of small sided games to get a bunch of sport specific cardio if you want to go in that route. and then general life stuff of like fucking walk and like maybe have a hobby outside of what we're doing. And like most of my athletes feel way better than like, because I used to be hardcore. Like we especially when I was an intern in college, we were doing like these 4-quarter Fridays. Like we were doing all these like these bike workouts and the shit to prepare. And we get to our first day of practice, and it didn't fucking work, dude. Like it just seemed like such a waste of time because it was so far removed from okay, now I have to move another human, and like I mean, we did the cardio, like we did
this cardio basically.
Yeah, and it was.
I mean, use those words improperly. But that's how I use them.
Yeah, and it was just like such a, I don't know, that was such an eye opener, and you still see like it's all. I mean, usually it's guys that love cardio that are pushing it, but I'm like, I don't know if you've ever actually played these sports because you get to it and it's like, again, you need to have some level. You can't just be a fat slob like because the offensive linemen are going to listen to this. But yeah, see, like I don't have to fucking do anything in the offseason. Like, no, you fucking do. But like, I think a lot of it's simpler than like. So many people are kind of pushing, especially in the team sport world that I work with. Soccer is one where it's like you get a lot of high mileage stuff, so we start to add in a little bit with them. But even them, like if they're a lot of the soccer guys right now, like they're playing it's kind of turning in a little bit of hockey baseball, where they're playing 3 to 5 nights a week anyways. It's like you're not going to get better cardio than actually playing the sport and doing that. Then like I'm not going to, if we're biking or running miles in here, like you're better off just playing soccer and developing the skill while you're developing those aerobic capacities. Just that you have one there? No. Then when you're building up for like one of these functional, like let's say you have a weird type lift. You were talking about like flexibility and mobility, like you don't do. Are you just like naturally like you just have it? You're just long, like because it looks like some of the lifts you require, like that's always what I was thinking that I'm like, it looks like they do require a lot of mobility in some sense.
I don't think anything I do requires a lot of mobility. I think it is kind of tricky because I mean the only things I think I do that even look like they require mobility are like the deserter deadlifts like that looks like you have to be really mobile to get down to that like
your super high ones. That's what I was thinking about too.
I'm pulling myself down into position. I'm starting in like this weird gargoyle stance because I don't have the hip and hamstring mobility to like stiff like reach down. Like I'm starting with my hands between my legs because I need to like squat to get the bar, and I'm kind of shinning them outside my legs as I go up. Like no, I'm just compensating for a lack of mobility with some little technical changes, and then just having a lot of posterior chain power. Like I don't need to be in the most efficient position to lift this weight. I'm just muscling right through it. So like, no, I don't have, I mean, I have maybe better than like an inactive person's mobility, or like maybe like a lifter that like never stretched anything ever, but like compared to someone who's even has decent mobility or like specifically trains it, I do not have mobility. I cannot touch my toes without bending my knees. I don't even think I can like touch my hands behind my back anymore. Like maybe if I warmed up and really worked into it, I could like touch the fingertips. But like, no, I do not have good mobility to the point where it does limit some lifts. Like I can't do a front rack, not even close. I can't do a back squat with a straight barbell anymore without like an extensive warm up. Like I do not have good mobility or flexibility. I just know how to work around it when I need to.
So how does that translate? You said jujitsu. How does that translate into jujitsu with like that lack of mobility? Are you just power bombing everyone?
Well, the thing about jujitsu is I'm 100 pounds heavier than almost everyone at my gym, so that it smooths a lot of bumpy roads when it comes to technique, flexibility, or anything like that. Like there's tons of stuff they teach us. I'm like, I'm never gonna fucking do that. Like I can't do this like small person jujitsu. Like I'm not gonna like pull this entire, I don't know, meter plus long leg in between me and the other person. He's a little 5'6" person. It's like has little tiny arms, can like close a lot of space. Like I'm just not going to do a lot of actual jujitsu, but I don't need to because I'm 6'5", weigh 275 pounds, and can deadlift 1,000 pounds. That opens a lot of doors. There are things that you're not supposed to be able to do that I can just do, and it kind of equalizes the playing field. There's weight classes for a reason, except when you're at a gym when no one's your size, there are no weight classes, and everyone's just stuck wrestling with you.
That's kind of a good like it's funny, but it's kind of a good like sports point of like it's okay to capitalize your gains, you know what I mean? Like capitalize your strengths and the things that you're good at in sports. And it doesn't mean never work on your weaknesses, but I do think a lot of athletes go away from their strengths because they're told like it's much easier for a coach to point out things you suck at, right? And just say like, yeah, you got to go do all these things you suck at. And I think a lot of athletes, it's like, okay, you do suck at them. We can spend a little bit of time, but doesn't mean your strength is ever going to go away. Like use your strengths. Like don't if you're not a jukey athlete, like we're not going to change you into a jukey athlete. It's not going to do you any benefit to like turn you into
Like,
a small
you
person jiu-jitsu
only
person.
need to address weaknesses when they get in the way of your goal. Like, for instance, I'm a terrible presser. I need to confront that face to face because there is no way I can deadlift a press. It's just there's no way I can take my strengths and apply them to pressing. And I need pressing for strongman because there's always going to be a press event. And the way the points are set up, if you completely bomb one event, you are not going to win unless everyone else really, really sucks. Like, if I want to win after bombing the first press event, I need to win literally everything else. And even then, I need everyone else to kind of split the points enough that I get to make up for that giant ass lead I gave up in the very beginning. So I need to make my press better if I want to succeed at strongman. That's unavoidable. I cannot squat a barbell very good at all. In fact, I can't squat a barbell, period. But I have no reason to squat a barbell. I don't need to squat a barbell. That's a weakness that I do not need to address because there is nothing I do or want to do that involves squatting a barbell, whether that be a straight bar or even like a buffalo bar these days. Like, if I really want to do squats, I grab my spider bar or my giant cambered bar, which doesn't really operate like a barbell, but that is good enough for me and my purposes. So I just go with those strengths. I do not address the fact that I'm like fucking suck at squatting barbell because I don't need to. There's no reason to squat a barbell.
Well,
I don't do anything that needs that.
dude, that's it's such a good philosophy too, because like I get the question all the time, like asking like the mobility piece and flexibility piece is a question I get all the time. Like it's like let your task dictate where you need to work, right? Like the Olympic lifts was a beautiful example for me. Like my front rack and the overhead shoulder position sucked. I can spend all day on the 14 million flexibility things, or I can spend all of my time on the 3 things I suck at and get exponential gains much quicker because it's my rate limiting factor and the thing that I want to go pursue.
Yep.
And I think like, I mean, it's just paralysis by like the analysis with all the information that we have. It's like so many athletes feel like they need to do everything and then it stresses them out and they do fucking nothing, or they do everything half-ass for 1 minute a week.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's like, man, just put all of that time into the 3 things you suck at. Go back to your sport. Go back to your task. Find the next thing you suck at, or not suck at, but the thing that is limiting you from performing, and then go spend all of your time on those. That has been probably the last 2 years the biggest change in my program, and it makes things go so much faster. And the intense I get from the athletes, you get this feedback loop of, oh, it's actually working, instead of oh, I'm doing all this shit and I'm not really noticing a massive gain. Then they go find the next thing we need to like spend a lot of time on, and we spend there, and then it's like it works, and we keep getting that cycle, so they keep showing up.
Yeah, I mean, it's like there's you can, if you want to do everything you possibly could do, like there's no time for that. Like, there's a lot of things I love. Like, I see like a cool grip feat or a cool flexibility thing. It's like, damn, that'd be cool to do that. But then I realized how much time would go into that, plus every other little niche thing I want to do. It's like, no, is it possible? Could I find all that time? Probably. Am I going to? No. And if I like put that burden on myself, knowing I'm not going to do it, well, I'm just setting myself up for failure and disappointment. So there's no reason to do that.
Well, that my other question too, you mentioned before how you don't squat anymore, but then you said that the squats drive like a lot of the stuff for the deadlifts. Is that just a personal thing, or is it because the cambered bars take care of the squats and you're not counting that?
That was speaking more like generally, like if you were training for powerlifting and you're like, how am I going to distribute my effective, like there's a limited amount of fatigue you can put into your training. Like you have a budget with regards to your fatigue, and you have to assign to your different movements. If I was a power lifter, knowing I was going to squat, knowing I was going to deadlift, I would put more into squat than deadlift. That's not me personally. That's just how I would advise someone who actually has that goal, which I mean, I throw squats in sometimes. Every once in a while, I get the itch to try and squat a big number. And, you know, because I'm not actually squatting, I'm not really prepared for it. And my knee gets angry at me. And it's kind of like a cycle. But no, if I am going to squat a bar, I grab a specialty bar these days. I have not tried to squat a straight bar aside from like some like video lifts, which aren't really heavy squats, and more like other things that happen to incorporate a squat in a long time. And I've even kind of moved away from my giant camber bar because the spider bar is just better because it's even more cheaty and beneficial for me.
Yeah.
I justify by saying most people do not squat more on a spider bar. I'm just weird that way, so it's fine. It's not really cheating. It's just, you know, I'm different.
The outlier, man. Just capitalize on outlier. Yeah. I was blanking on that question that I had for you now. I'm totally blanking. Oh my God, Tristan, take it. I had something. Oh no, this is going to drive me fucking insane now.
One question I always get from people, and I think that it adds to that almost analysis by paralysis, is recovery. Is people asking about recovery? Do you have anything that you specifically do for recovery modalities, especially with those super heavy lifts? Because that's not an area that I'm super knowledgeable in. Is the recovery aspect different for those? And like, do you have extra things that you do outside of the gym, or is it just load management and being intelligent?
Load management, you know, I mean, I don't have like specific active recovery things. I believe in active recovery in general, but I'm not like, oh, I did a specific stretch or a specific thing. I recently, like for the longest time, the only time whenever I'd get a back injury, it's always on the right side. It's always kind of like halfway between my like tailbone and my thigh. So I think it's either like one of those erector muscles or probably the SI joint. Like it's not really a back injury. It's just in the back area. And because, it's all tied together, you really can not usually pinpoint the exact source, but it's always the exact same place, always the exact same thing. And it would usually go away relatively quickly. But beginning of this year is like, it kind of stuck around, like not bad enough, but just enough where like, oh, like if I stand still for like 10 minutes standing up, it starts to get sore, or like I wake up with it sore, or like I feel a bit more unusual. I'm like, well, this sucks. Like it usually goes away quickly. And when I was at my competition, there was a physical therapist / chiropractor. He also happens to hold a 900-pound national deadlift record. So he's in the small minority of chiropractors and personal physical therapists I would listen to because he's actually strong. And he said, yeah, if your SI joint is like tight, I'm not surprised. I'm kind of surprised it's taking this long, given your strength level that you're only experiencing issues now. Here are some like specific movements to like actually stretch that joint, because it's not a joint that usually moves. It's usually, stationary. So to actually stretch it kind of takes a very specific movement pattern. And he's like, yeah, if that gets inflamed, like it's slow to recover. You need to like stretch it out, and like 90% chance that's what it is. So now I just do like that kind of little rehab, like hip shift stretch thing. And
you got those butt walks going or what? Donnie Thompson butt walks?
No, it's like laying on your side, like putting a roller between your legs and like just kind of shifting one side of your hip forward and back while kind of trying to keep it on stationary. It's kind of a weird movement because like you need to like have mind muscle connection with your stretch, or else you like do it wrong. But it seems to be helping, or maybe it's went away on its own, but like it takes so little time. Like I throw it in between sets at the gym, make sure I get it done a couple times a week, and we'll see. We'll see if if I get anything out of it. But other than that, like I'll occasionally do things like when a problem comes up, but there's nothing like special I do. I'm not like doing like ice baths or like those like big things you put on your legs, so like I don't know, cold treatment or whatever. Like if someone's 7 I'd probably try. It probably feels cool, but I don't do anything like that just out of hand.
Dude, the fucking Lifetime, all of the Lifetimes just enter. I don't know if you guys have seen this or been in a Lifetime recently. They all put in recovery spots now, and you have all of these like untrained people throwing on those fucking like NFL, like those the ice boot things. I'm like, bro, what are we doing, dude? I just watched you work out for 2 hours and do absolutely nothing during your workout. Like you do not need,
exactly.
Bro,
I bet they
like
feel
the most
neat.
untrained people of all time putting on these Normatechs for 2 hours. I'm like, oh, bro, what are we doing?
No, I eat, I sleep. I keep moving, keep the blood flowing. If there's an injury or like an injury starting, like I try and stretch that, get it moved with like lightweight stuff just to keep blood flow to the area. But that's about the extent of my recovery. And then in terms of load management, I just play it by ear. If I find myself getting extra fatigue, I take more rest days. I call easy. I'll do less training sessions. Just trying not to reach the point where I need like a big deload, because it was my experience with like planned deloads back when I ran like written programs that had them. They never really felt like they did a ton for me. And in fact, I always felt like I lost an edge for like a couple of days after getting back from the deload. So like if you deload every 4th week and you're losing almost a week after that, well, that's half your training gone. So it just seemed dumb. So I'm like, let's just not get to the point where we need to take a whole week off and like forget everything we did and let the body get all lazy and like just play by ear and try and keep a steady fatigue level versus blasting it up, letting go down, blasting up, letting go down. Like, granted, I know that's hard, easier said than done if you're inexperienced and don't know what you're like looking for, vis-a-vis body responses to fatigue, but like 10 years in, I have a pretty good idea of where I'm at.
Yeah, the 4th week deload has to be one of the biggest scams the strength conditioning field has invented of all time, dude. Like I used to follow that so religiously. For so long, I would follow it because I needed to follow it. That's what everybody told me. And every time I would come back feeling like shit. For literally like the week of the deload, I felt like a piece of shit because I wasn't doing anything.
You weren't doing anything, and you're like your body forgot how to move, and you had to take like a week to get on, like get back up to steam and back up the hard presser, and like I take deloads thinking, oh, the body's all recovered. Now you can hit PRs. And no, I'm not going to fucking hit PRs because my body's gone lazy. Like there's a time and place for like a real strict deload. Like if you're really advanced, you're really strong, and you're really pushing yourself prior to competition, and you're specifically looking for that like super recomposition effect, whatever it's called. Yes. Like you should take about a week off before a competition if you're like my size. Like that. I took I didn't take a week off. I took like 3-4 days off and like a couple lightweight days.
Took a weekend off.
I took a weekend basically, yeah. I took a couple of days off for my competition. I was like a little bit lighter in the couple of days before that. So like there was a total week of deload, which consists of like 3 lower intensity workouts and like 4 actual rest days. And that's probably good enough for me, a very large, very experienced person going into a competition. random person training at much lower intensities, not going into anything, does not need that. They just need to play it by ear. Like maybe take a rest couple days. Like maybe willing to take a day off. You do not need to spend an entire week doing nothing. Or even worse, in my mind, is when you go in for a week and you lift at like 50%, which is like that's just like you're getting like lifting blue balls there. Like it's just that's awful. I hate that worse than a regular rest because like I'm still going to the gym except I'm not doing anything. Like I'm still giving the time in to do nothing because I'm lifting 50% of my max, and it's just dumb.
That might be the title: avoiding lifting blue balls.
When you're making, this is the question I had before when I totally just fucking had CTE. When you're making your entertainment pieces and like your creative pieces, I ask Bud Jeffries this too, and it's kind of all the lifters that are like you. What's your process of creating it? Is it just like you see something and you're like, fuck yeah, I want to go do this?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it's just I don't have like a specific process. Like sometimes I'll see someone do something, I'll either do the same thing or like a variation of that, or sometimes I'll just have an idea, or sometimes I'll know I want to use a bar and I'll just try a couple of different things. And one thing, if you look at all the videos, you might notice is like most of them aren't completely original ideas. There's a lot of variations on a theme. Like once I find something that works pretty good, I just go with the variations of it to keep it a little bit new, and that can go a long ways. Like I've had a lot of all of my bench stuff, like every bench video I've put up is some variation of benching a bar that should not be benched in a balancing position and or changing up when I'm on. And like that's all it is. Like that this is permutations upon permutations of that. And that's every single bench related entertainment I've basically ever put out is, using the wrong bar, adding a balance component, benching on something that's not a bench, benching something that's not a bar, like just all variations on the theme. So that takes a lot of ideas, and deadlifts are kind of the same. Obviously, some things are just totally like new and original and they come out of nowhere and I just don't do them again. But like, rope deadlifts, I have a bunch of different variations of essentially using the rope around my neck to do deadlift. Like that's all kind of like, it's like 10 different variations of that. Because if something goes well once, I just kind of, play on that theme until either it stops getting responses or just, get bored of it. So
yeah, the constraint.
There's a lot of
the constraints to create freedom or to create creativity. Like I feel like it's like the war of art. He talks about that kind of like if you're just sitting there in like the emptiness of trying to like make something up. Like works, like, you need some sort of constraint in there.
Same thing with actual art. Like if you're in art class and like, hey, so you can draw anything you want. I would spend the entire hour if you told me I can draw anything I want. I wouldn't draw anything because I don't know what the fuck to draw. If you told me like you have to do this, and even more like the more specific the prompt is, the more I'm gonna be like, well, fuck your prompt. I'm gonna circumvent it while technically doing it. And that's how you can get like the real creativity is no, screw you. I'm gonna find a way to be creative in spite of this constraint. And that's what you kind of need most of the time, I think, for real creativity. Because if you're just given a blank slate and unlimited freedom, that you're not going to do anything. At least I'm not going to. I'm not able to like create tabula rasa creativity out of nothing. I need some kind of limitation to work around. That's why I'm a problem solver at heart. So like my creativity is problem solving. Like I have this problem of this constraint. How do I turn that into something entertaining or something creative? And that's when I start, having good ideas.
Hell yeah, dude. I fucking love that. Mm-hmm. The last question before I kind of let you go, we have a bunch of like, I would say offensive linemen that kind of look like you, the same type of build. When you're training, or not you not personally, but if you were to work with somebody that is in the offensive lineman type world, like what's kind of your like general philosophies that you change from somebody that is a big, tall, lanky, like but kind of a monster of a human versus the typical, let's say like a wide receiver type or just a different build, a squattier build? Like do you have principles when you're working with these athletes and things that they can look into or think about when you're training them?
Not a ton, because like I said, I just like I answer questions people have. Like a lot of people, like if they're tall and lanky, is usually like they're not like if someone's my size and like actually built, they've probably figured it out. So they're not coming to me for advice. Like if someone's like a completely tall, lanky beginner, I might have some ideas for them. I doubt an offensive lineman needs those basic advice. All I'd say is, certain lifts aren't going to make sense. They use variations that are more applicable to your anatomy. Like you can learn to squat with long femurs. It's just harder and it's just not necessarily as good. Like there are better alternatives. Like get a bar that doesn't force you to like be as upright. So naturally you're going to lean forward a lot more because you have a longer torso. Like to keep everything lined up, you need more forward lean. That's going to happen. That's going to come with its own problems. You can circumvent that if you want to like focus on the quads with something like a machine or a bar that gets rid of the need to like keep everything in a central line of mass, which your anatomy is going to force a forward lean and force more posterior chain. So rows, like barbell rows, I don't really do them, or if I do them, they're going to be like a lower back exercise, not a back exercise, because I have to go so far forward to go around my knees that there is such a large lever that I'm spending more energy just trying to keep my torso from, falling forward with the weight than I actually am pulling the weight. So probably use something other than a barbell row if you're long and lanky like me. And I don't know, eat a lot. They probably need to eat more. Granted, I'm assuming a offensive lineman knows how to eat, but for anything like me,
that's
you
the
probably
skill
need
set
to
they
eat.
got down. They might not have that try hard skill set down, but they got the eating skill set down.
Yeah, I would just give them, be willing to adapt movement patterns that are going to be more useful for their anatomy. They're not going to be limited by their, gangly limbs. And that's probably the core of it. Yeah.
Fuck yeah, dude. Well, I appreciate you coming on, dude. Appreciate you taking the time today and ripping this with us.
Had a great time. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you guys for listening. Keep chopping wood.
Thank you for listening. Join us next week as we dive down another rabbit hole. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a 5-star rating. Follow us on Instagram at Austin Yoakum to stay updated on future podcast guests. Keep chopping wood.